Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Casual Theologian. We are back with a translation series video. Let's just get right into it. Today we're going to be talking about the CSB, which is probably my favorite translation. I'm going to be honest. It's good. It's a good translation, and we're going to get into why I think it's good in just a second. But I want to start by saying actually something. I know the last video, the NKJV, I kind of sped through it, but honestly, it's because it's so similar to the KJV. So if you weren't satisfied with my NKJV video or podcast, check out the KJV, and it really helps understand the NKJV. So that's just for you. I wanted to preface by saying that. Now let's get into the CSB. The history and details of the CSB. We're going to break this down once again into categories: history and details, pros and cons, / peculiarities. So according to the CSB Bible website, they say the CSB was created using optimal equivalence, a translation philosophy that pursues both linguistic precision to the original languages and readability in contemporary English. We believe that you don't have to choose between faithfulness to the original text and clarity. The CSB text has proven to optimize both, making it ideal for preaching and study and for sharing with others. So we see that this Bible, like they just said, falls under the category of optimal equivalence. And I think in the KJV video, I had mentioned that there's really only like 3 or 4 different translation types. I think I said 4. However, the CSB has kind of proven me wrong, and adding another kind of translation style, which is optimal equivalence. This is where they really tried as hard as they could to preserve the original Hebrew and Greek texts and do word for word as much as possible, while also making it more readable, so you can kind of use it for both readability and word study. Would I recommend the CSB for word study over something like the NASB? Probably not. But it's still really good for word studies, honestly. Needless to say, I like that a lot. I think it's really useful, and I think we as modern day Christians that have been so removed from the Hebrew and Greek culture and how they talked and how they lived could use a translation that kind of is faithful to the words, but also helps us understand a lot better. Whereas something like the NIV or NLT would be a little more on the here, just understand it in your English language. And the NASB is very much like, let me just have the most wooden structure possible, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but the CSB tries to bridge the gap between the two. The CSB is actually just a revised or revamped version of the HCSB, the Holman Christian Standard Bible, which was written by over 100 scholars spanning over 17 denominations. It was written with the same intent as our modern day CSB. However, the Holman Christian Standard Bible was written in 1999, and the CSB was officially written and published in 2017. Now you may be wondering, if they had the CSB already written in the form of the HCSB, then why did they need to make the CSB? Does that mean that there was something wrong? Or does that mean that there was something that they missed? Whatever. Honestly, no. They just kind of switched minor writing styles and details. And it goes as far as basically just doing stuff as capitalizing pronouns in regards to God. The Holman Christian Standard Bible didn't do that, such as the word him or he. And something that I actually think is kind of cool is that they decided to gather together when they were revising the Holman Christian Standard Bible and said, let's clarify gender language. Now, before every single Christian on the planet gets super triggered in today's climate about gender and all that stuff, that is not what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they put in non-gender specific pronouns for everything, but they made it more understandable in areas to where somebody, if they weren't used to reading the Bible or weren't used to understanding the context fully, could understand what the Bible is saying in specific areas. For instance, they basically would take out the word he or man in verses where it was referring to everyone, including women. Which, for a seasoned Bible reader, you're like, well, why did they do that? I know, whatever. But to somebody who's maybe new to the faith, or it like just that stuff doesn't come naturally to them while they're reading, I think it's a really good like middle road. For instance, in Acts chapter 17, verse 34, it says, so the men believed. The CSB says some people joined, basically meaning like, there was a word that was preached, and other translations say, so the men believed, and CSB decided to say some people joined. So just stuff like that, including everyone. Not saying that the original version didn't include everyone, but they made it more clear that it was referring to men and women rather than just men, for those people who, like I said, aren't used to reading literature like that. The source texts that the CSB used, they used ancient Hebrew texts, the most basic and up-to-date ones that we could find for the Old Testament, and something called the Nestle-Aland, I hope I'm saying that right, for the New Testament. The Nestle-Aland Greek New Testament is, like I said, it's just a big Greek New Testament that is an eclectic text. Now, an eclectic text, for those of you who don't know, is basically where they take a bunch of recent and just known Greek manuscripts, gather them together, and compare them like line by line to find out what the original manuscript probably was getting at. If it was saying like, Jesus walked in the boat, the Lord stepped onto the boat, and Jesus Christ walked onto a rowboat, it's probably going to look at all those and go, okay, yeah, we understand what the Bible was saying. So they basically just take a bunch of different Greek source texts, match them together line by line, and figure out what the original manuscript must have said based on what all of these source texts say. Because we all know that not all of the source texts are word for word the exact same, but they can convey the same message. So that's basically what the CSB in the New Testament was trying to get at. And like I said before, the CSB is a more recent translation. It was published in 2017. Now let's get into the pros. So a big pro is obviously going to be readability. Me personally, I don't know if I've ever read a Bible that was more readable than the CSB. And I've read a decent amount of Bible translations. I honestly think it's more readable than like the NLT or the NIV. This might just be my personal opinion, but I think it's one of the most readable translations out there. But I also like the fact that it's also very much word for word. I like how it's translated as an optimal equivalent, and I also like how it was formed with an eclectic text for the New Testament. I think that that's really good. A lot of KJV only advocates are going to hate that, but I think it's actually a really good and reliable way. It's the most up-to-date way we can do it, and I just really enjoy that. Also, if you have a physical copy of the CSB, it's absolutely chalked full with footnotes to help you understand the original meaning of the verses in their original Greek or Hebrew. If there's like some that are kind of up for debate or are more ambiguous than other ones, they often will have footnotes explaining those verses in greater detail. So those are all really good pros. Cons. What's interesting about the cons is it's actually just the pros, but you can also look at those as downsides. Some people say that the CSB is too liberal in its word-for-word approach to call itself a word-for-word, while other people are saying it's too word-for-word to be readable. I've yet to meet somebody who actually says that the CSB isn't really readable. I think it's extremely readable, but that is an actual complaint. So that's just something to look out for. If you are like, I want to read word for word and that's it, I wouldn't recommend the CSB. And if you're saying I want to just read it for the whole narrative, then I maybe wouldn't recommend the CSB either. I would recommend it like an NASB for the word for word and just like a NLT for the just overall story. but it's a good middle road, but it doesn't excel in either. I think it does fairly really good in both, but I don't think it's like the choice for either side. So that could be viewed as a con as well. So what is my verdict on this Bible translation? 2 thumbs up. I think it's amazing. I think it's a great translation. I've been singing its praises this whole video. I just think it's really good. I think it's a translation that you could hand a new believer and they would benefit greatly from it. And also hand to a seasoned believer who maybe can get something out of it that they didn't get out of a different translation. So yes, I am 100% for this. When I posted that video a while back on my Instagram and I think on my YouTube as well, go check out my YouTube if you haven't, The Casual Theologian. But when I posted that video about me reading the Bible in 30 days, I read it entirely through with the CSB, and it was great. It was a great experience. So yes, 100% get yourself a CSB and read it a lot. Get yourself a Bible and read it a lot. So with that, guys, I will see you next time, and we're going to be covering the coveted, the deeply loved by scholars and some normal people like me, NASB, New American Standard Bible. So stay tuned for that, and we're gonna have a fun time digging into that. So see you later, and God bless.